Hey everyone, I'm Carter, the game director on BitCraft, and this time I'm here with Alessandro, the other half of Clockwork Labs. If you haven't seen our other video with Tyler and myself, definitely go check that out right now. You can see that here. Today we're going to be talking a little bit deeper about BitCraft and the upcoming alpha, as well as learning a little bit more about Alessandro and what he does here at Clockwork Labs. So Alessandro, can you tell us a bit about yourself and what you do here?
Sure. Hey, everyone. So I'm Alessandro. I'm Italian and I'm a software engineer. I studied computer science in the US, in Baltimore, which is where I met Tyler. And then a few years after college, we started the Clockwork Labs company. And now a few years after that, I'm leading the engineering team on the BitCraft team, while Tyler is focusing on SpaceMDB, which is our other product at Clockwork Labs, a backend game engine. On the BitCraft team, I primarily focus on the engineering, development, as well as the production side. So that means that I try to ensure that the game is on schedule, at least on our internal schedule, and that the quality of the game, in terms of bugs or performance, is up to a standard that we feel is respectable.
Awesome. So BitCraft is a pretty complicated game and a pretty complicated technical product. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the technical challenges or hurdles that we've encountered along the development?
Yeah, for sure. I'd say there's several, of course. I would say the main ones that are specifically technical have to do with state synchronization and state persistence. The state synchronization one has to do with making sure that everyone who's playing the game, so all clients that are connected, all see the same state. So for example, if you're building a town, making sure that when you complete a building, everybody receives that update at the same time and it's correct, it's the same one for everyone and they're all seeing the building pop up at the same place at the same time. And the other one I mentioned is state persistence, which has to do with making sure that game state, so this means anything that has to do with the world or the player, is persisted across server restarts. So if the server goes down either because of a crash or because of maintenance, we want to make sure that when the server recovers, it has all that state exactly where it was when it went down. So these are pretty common problems in multiplayer games and in MMOs in particular. Everyone has to deal with them. Everyone who's developing MMOs has to deal with them. And there are some pretty good products out there that solve the state synchronization problem already, but they usually don't solve the state persistence problem at the same time. And what we had to do was build a backend engine that could support both, that could solve both of these problems, as well as be performant enough to provide for the scale that we're going to have in the game. And that's when we developed SpaceMDB, which is our backend engine, another product at Clockwork Labs, which solves these two problems simultaneously, as well as doing some other interesting, cool things that maybe you'll hear about in another video in the future.
So is it correct to say that most MMOs are developing their own custom backends?
Yes, yeah. Most MMOs develop their custom backend. That's because these problems, as well as the scale of an MMO, are quite unique in game development, and so game developers tend to solve them in their own custom engine on the backend side. So we are not necessarily doing anything technologically novel. We're not trying to achieve a much larger scale than any previous MMO. But what we have done is we have taken our backend solution, which is called SpaceMDB, and we've made it available to everyone to use. So that means that if you're a game developer who's interested in making an MMO, it should become a lot easier using SpaceMDB to do so. There are some other cool things that SpaceMDB does that we hope are innovative enough for people to be attracted to them, and we think it does some really cool things. So definitely check it out if you're into game development and you want to build an MMO. And I would say maybe one more thing on the SpaceMDB side and on the engine side. It's very useful for us internally to separate out the game team, so the BitCraft team, the one I'm on, from the SpaceMDB team, because that means that on one end, where Tyler is on the SpaceMDB team, they can all focus on just the engine and just making sure that it's performant and it's consistent, while on the game side, we can focus exclusively on making sure the client is performant, we don't have frame drops, and that the gameplay feels good and the game content is progressing well, or we don't have to really worry about all of the other problems that are being solved by SpaceMDB.
Speaking about the client application, what game engine are we using and why did we go with that?
Yeah, so we're using Unity, which we're using because it's a very popular game engine, and it is well documented. It has very good resources out there, and it also is a game engine that many game developers know. And so for us, recruiting was easier this way. If we went for a very niche game engine, it would have been more difficult to find people with the right expertise. And then I would say that developing one a backend server engine was enough for us. We didn't want to develop like a front-end engine at the same time, although that's maybe in the cards for the future. There's definitely been some talk about a SpaceMDB game engine, but I think that's still a dream for the time being.
Awesome. So last month I talked with Tyler a bit about the next stage of development being the closed alpha. Can you tell us a little bit about what some of the goals are for that?
Yeah, of course. So I'd say there's three main goals. The first one is that we want to make a larger scale test, larger than we've done so far in pre-alpha, to see how the gameplay works with a wider audience. This will give us more data points to understand what works and what doesn't, so we can fix what doesn't work, as well as understand what happens when a lot of players are in the game at the same time. These has interesting effects on the economy, and how people interact in towns and all of that. The second goal is to test the infrastructure. So test how well the backend, meaning SpaceMDB, handles the CCU that we plan, as well as do a longer test where more things can go wrong, essentially, and figure out what goes wrong in a month-long test and how do we fix that. And then the third goal is to drop the NDA so that more players can experience the game either by playing it directly or without the NDA by consuming content produced by content creators so they can see what the gameplay is like and form their own opinion on the game. Okay, so let's switch this around now. I will ask Carter some questions now. So as the game director, from your perspective, can you tell us what's coming in the first closed alpha, what we're calling Alpha 1?
For sure. So first off, we want to bring a new level of polish to the game that hasn't really been seen before in the pre-alphas. Firstly, this includes bringing music and sound effects to the game for the first time. This also is adding a lot of visual polish, which includes visual effects and particles and animation polish, all that type of things. We're also really trying to improve the way the character feels to control, so really improving the responsiveness and visually what your character is doing as you control them. And then lastly would be a full overhaul of the UI, both in terms of bringing a new style to it that we think looks really awesome and fits well with the game, but also improving UX problems that we had in the UI during previous pre-alpha playtests. Next would be adding a lot of content to the game to accommodate the longer length of the test. And so in the last pre-alpha test, we got as long as 1 week or just over 1 week playtests, and this was around 4 tiers of the tiered content in the game. What we're looking to do with Alpha 1 is actually pump that all the way up to around 1 month with 6 tiers of content. And so as you can imagine, as you progress through the higher tiers, the burden of reaching the next tier gets a little bit longer and requires more steps to reach. And we're eventually looking at getting to 10 tiers of content in the game for on the horizon. Another aspect is a complete revamped and redesigned biomes for the game. So this is taking a pass on all the visuals of the biomes, the resources in them, the atmospherics, the terrain, all this stuff. We have completely new tech and new art for, as well as adding things like lakes and rivers to the terrain. We also have a new core skill that we're looking at adding to the game. This is one that wasn't in previous pre-alpha playtests, but we think adds a really cool new gameplay and has a really unique thematic identity to it. So we're interested to see what players think about that. And then the last major thing that's coming in Alpha 1 is a lot more players and really seeing what happens to the game as we pump up the player density and just the amount of players in the game in general. In previous pre-alpha tests, we had a fairly low player density, and as I mentioned in a recent blog, we had relatively low sizes for each settlement. What we really want to do is see with the new systems, with the new content, with the increased length of the playtest, can we create a world where players form higher density towns, where players form groups that are larger and a bit more trustless, and seeing, what happens, how do players interact with the player housing aspect of things as well.
Awesome. Okay, and then what is not coming in Alpha 1? So what is on the horizon but won't be part of the first Alpha test?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one thing that we've been planning for quite a few months that isn't going to be fully in Alpha 1 is deepening the gameplay of each of the skills. So right now we have 12 or 13 skills in the game that players can specialize in, but you'll find that the gameplay from skill to skill doesn't vary a huge amount. While the thematic identities are pretty different between, for example, woodcutting, forestry, mining, fishing, the gameplay of these is fairly similar. And so in the future, we really want to deepen the gameplay and create unique gameplay identities for each of the skills in addition to their unique thematic identities. Another thing would be deepening the gameplay around ruins, ancient ruins, and travelers, really giving the players more stuff to explore, more world lore to discover and find out about, the history and the lore of the world. And then something that also comes with that is deeper gameplay around the non-skill content. So these are things like mounts, vehicles, improving your character through augments, cosmetics for your character, cosmetics for your settlement or for your house, more complicated ruins to explore and conquer. So yeah, lots of stuff there. Another final thing that's not going to be in Alpha 1 is empires. And so we have a pretty thought out design for how we want to handle empires, but at the current stage, the empires design relies heavily on kind of a stable foundation of the settlement scale. And so we really want to focus in Alpha 1 on developing and strengthening the settlement scale of the game. So for a long time in pre-alpha, we've been able to polish and get the character scale gameplay to a point that we're fairly happy with. Next, we're really focusing on the settlement scale to make sure that players are building these kind of stable towns that have all the right systems and incentives in place for like intra-town economies, trading between towns, people specializing and being able to socialize and work together in these towns. And then once that's in a really good spot, then we're going to move on to adding the empires layer. So that's planned out and coming in the future, but not just yet.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, and thank you all for watching. This is all from us today. We have a few ideas of what topics we might do next, but we'd love to hear from you in the comments about what you would be interested in hearing from us. A few ideas might be we could go deeper into player housing and how that will work. We could go deeper into empires, which is what Carter just talked about, and explain how that may work in its first incarnation. Or we could go deeper in travelers and non-skill based gameplay. Just let us know. And thank you for watching.
Thanks.
Don't forget to like and subscribe. Smash that bell icon.